This is a segment of Human Capital Matters. We thank you for visiting with us today. It's an interactive business event that Human Capital Solutions has chosen to bring to the community, the business community, and what we would like to think is our contribution to COVID-19, community service, trying to offer support and resources through a very, very trying time. We have Ms. Khara Julien with us today. Khara, welcome. We're so excited to have you with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We're going to be discussing, Khara and I will have a chat about defining reality well. And we have visited through this subject. It's fascinating. And I really like Khara's perspective to how she and Americold has responded to the coronavirus crisis. As you all know, there's a chat portal. We certainly enjoy receiving your questions through the chat portal. We also have a dedicated email address you can see at the bottom of this slide, working remotely at humancs.com. And oh, by the way, we're not all working remotely anymore. We're back in the office until we have a natural gas leak, which we're dealing with. Next week, we have the pleasure of Mr. Mike Rood. He's Senior Vice President and CHRO with Option Healthcare out of Chicago. Mike and Option Care Health are about mainly in-home infusion therapy. And so you can imagine the new landscape of going into people's homes and patients' homes with new protocols. So we're going to be excited to have Mike with us next week. Back to Miss Khara Julien. Khara and I have known each other maybe about a year and a half, and we visited in the great city of Atlanta. Khara joined Americold in September of 19. She is the EVP and CHRO with Americold. She's responsible for leading all talent initiatives to support the business direction. She's responsible for formulating organizational strategies for future development, attraction, onboarding, and certainly the retention of high caliber talent, something that we have in common, of course, along with many other things, Khara. Khara brings about 20 years of HR leadership experience. She got started when she was 19, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Manufacturing, distribution, her previous VP and CHR role for GMS, that's when Khara and I met. She was responsible for leading the development and a nationwide HR strategy. She has helped close more than 30 acquisitions with private and publicly traded companies. Prior to GMS, she was in an HR leadership role with Novelis, another Atlanta company, along with Owens Corning. So, Khara, thank you again for visiting us. I hope I'm not winded. Probably need to relax after running up the road, hoping an explosion didn't happen. But I think the content of our conversation today is one of inspiration, one of heart, one of hope that we all need to hear in these times. So, Khara, who is Americold? And tell us, what do you guys do? Not everyone's heard of Americold. So what's the story there?
Sure. So those who know me know I'm a big fan of taking very complex things and making them simple. So our business is very complex in that we're a part of the cold storage infrastructure and supply chain for food. But to simplify what that means is basically you think about those who make food, whether it be produce or meat or other products that need to be refrigerated or frozen. You think about the grocery store where you go buy it. And we're that step in the middle where when the food is produced, it needs to be sent somewhere to store in order to keep it fresh and ready to go to consumers on the other side. So we're that middle part of the supply chain that gets from the manufacturers to grocery store shelves.
Excellent. Yes, it's a real interesting niche that not all of us are aware of. Thank you for sharing, Khara.
Yeah, and just to add on that too, from a context perspective, we have about 13,000 associates worldwide. We're in the US, Canada, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand. with a joint venture in Brazil as well. So it is a global company that serves communities around the world. So, you know, like you said, not many people know us, but if you're shopping at the grocery store or going out to a restaurant, chances are some of the food you're eating has come through one of our facilities.
And I bet it's a good idea to keep food refrigerated or frozen for times, thus the consequences of that, right?
Absolutely. You know, Bo, as you and I were talking about earlier, as we were preparing for this conversation, people often don't think of the fact that once it's produced, if you don't have a freezer to put it in or a refrigerator to put it in until the grocery stores are ready to receive that product, it will go bad and it won't serve its purpose. And so we're an essential part of that supply chain, keeping it cold until consumers are ready for it.
And Khara, several weeks ago, and it's probably been 3 or 4, and you graciously elected to be with us and thinking about the topic and what you would want to discuss. You decided defining reality well is your topic. So we've had various speakers that have offered value in these conversations. And so tell us again, how did you come upon defining reality well? How did you do that topic, Khara?
Sure. So when you initially reached out to me and said, let's talk about business continuity and what can we learn from Americold, or what conversation can we share with the community that might be helpful, my initial reaction was, so much has already been said, and is there anything unique that I can add that people might actually value? And as I started thinking through it, I realized there is a unique perspective that I don't know that many companies have thought about. And that's the fact that in business continuity, when we think about that, we think about the paper, the book, the binder that has the plan that says, when things go wrong, here's your business continuity plan, and here's how you go and make sure that your business continues to operate no matter what happens. But the part of the plan that's missing is there's this whole people aspect of the new reality. And so as I got to thinking about it, I was reflecting on the former CEO of Mattel, Bob Eckert, shared a story with me that I thought was relevant, which was, he said, what defines a great CEO, or a great leader for that matter, is 3 things. First, an ability to define reality well. Second, the ability to see where your company most advantages in that reality. And then third, line up the troops to get behind it. And what I realized is, in this pandemic, if we wanted to deny reality, if we wanted to stick our heads in the sand and not accept that the world had changed, you can't move forward with a business continuity plan because you don't even know what you're up against. And so the first thing is, accept what's happened, accept the impact it has on your business. And once you do that, then you can say, all right, now what's our plan? How do we get into action around that?
Khara, I remember many years ago, a book came out called Who Moved My Cheese?
Yes, love that book.
Yeah. Boy, isn't that relevant during these times that, you know, a company was producing, maybe even enjoying record profits, and the goals, sales goals for 2020 were X, and the cheese got moved.
Yep.
What do you think, what are some of the reasons that maybe we as leaders do not always define reality so well, Khara?
Well, I love that you brought in the Who Moved My Cheese book, Bo. It's one of my favorites, and it's very relevant because when the cheese moves, there are things maybe that we like about it, and there are things that we don't like about it. And what we sometimes forget is when that cheese moves, there's some grief there that we have to go through. And so I think companies struggle defining reality when they don't take a step back and say, we have to experience this almost grief curve of saying, I want to deny. First, I'm denying this isn't happening. This is not happening. And trust me, that's where I was in the beginning. This is not happening. I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and this is not happening. Once you get past the denial, then you get to the anger and you say, I don't like this. I now understand it's happening and I don't like it and I'm mad. And then once you get past the anger, then you're kind of sad because it's like, now what am I going to do? I thought I knew the plan. I thought I knew where the cheese was. It moved and I'm sad because I don't like this new cheese at all. And then you kind of get past that. You start negotiating and saying, okay, well, maybe we can still hold on to this piece of our business, but we need to let go of this. And you're kind of negotiating. And then finally you say, okay, I accept the cheese moved. And to your question of why other companies don't define reality well is because this whole grief cycle, they didn't even recognize they were in it. They didn't recognize that they had to get from denial through anger to acceptance and say, okay, now I get it. There was an emotional component that I think we just forgot people had to go through.
Well put. Excellent. We internalize this as well. One of our divisions in executive coaching and career transition coaching will remind talents and executives that when you lose your job, of course, you grieve. And you have to go through the grieving process. And probably one of the last things we should do while we're grieving is to network and to interview, right?
Right.
And so you get that aha moment with a lot of folks who say, oh, you're right. I'm not at my best. My attitude isn't where it should be. And we don't realize as humans that we're grieving. We need someone to point that out to us a lot, don't we?
Yep, absolutely.
Super. So you mentioned the grief cycle. Tell me the role that plays in communicating the business continuity plan, Khara.
Sure. So one of the things that obviously is unique about the experience we just went through and we're still going through with COVID-19 is that typically if you're going through a change, you have an executive team and resources in a company that goes through a change management plan. And a part of that change management plan typically takes into consideration the fact that people have to get from one side to the other of this grieving process. Well, when it's thrust upon you and the leadership team isn't yet through the grieving process, because we didn't make this decision either, all of a sudden we're having to lead people who are going through this grief cycle at the same time that we're grieving a loss of normal. And it's very disorienting. And I think, we'll talk more, I'm sure, about specifically how Americold dealt with that. But what I would say is a lot of conversations, daily, hourly, engaging in conversation to make sure that we all were going together through this getting to acceptance of our new reality and how we could then adapt.
Mm-hmm. So you and the team at Americold, your leadership team, you had to navigate this cycle. Share a few more examples or details of how you particularly navigated. What worked, what did not work? What would you do differently next time?
Yeah, so if I reflect back, and I think on the first and second week, which obviously were the most challenging for most of us, the first thing that became clear is that we were in a very unique position being a part of the food supply chain. And many of us were new to the company. I mean, I was 4 or 5 months in. Many of my peers are less than a year with the company. And so we knew that, like intellectually, we knew our job is to get food into communities, but it hadn't yet emotionally hit us that in a global pandemic, when the grocery store shelves have been emptied, we have a greater calling to serve our communities. And as essential workers, we don't have a choice. And that was an important aha moment, I think, at least for me. I'll speak from my personal experience is, of course, as I was kind of fighting through, can we, should we, what do we do? When all of a sudden it sunk in, there really isn't a choice here. We have to continue getting food to communities. Then all of a sudden it was really about how do we help others see that same future and motivate people to get there.
Excellent. You know, as the history books are being written and the business schools will take this window of time, our firm experienced some of our clients, whether they're healthcare, hospital systems had to pivot. And so your general surgeries and elective surgeries were put on pause, a lot of even oncology treatment to make room for COVID patients and ventilators. We saw some agriculture, food manufacturers, spike in demand. So not only was their demand for their product increasing, they were having COVID incidences to where they had to shut some operations and idle some factories in the midst of this backlog of orders. So, it was real interesting to see how our different clients and industries were responding. How did the pandemic particularly affect your business, Khara?
Yeah, we, it's interesting because on the one hand, you could say we weren't saving lives. We're not working in hospitals, we're not in law enforcement, we aren't in the types of roles that most people would consider to be critical at the beginning of this crisis. However, when you think about the panic that sets into communities, if they think food isn't coming, that can be life-threatening, and that can cause more disruption in communities, even if it's just a perceived lack of food coming. And so, a great example was our facility in Halifax, where we had a positive COVID test reported that, one of our associates had come in and told us that they had tested positive. And the immediate response in the facility was, well, everyone has to go home for 14 days in quarantine and shut the facility down. And that was a scary moment, I would say, where on the one hand, yes, we care about our people and we want them to feel safe. And on the other hand, if a whole region of a country doesn't get milk because we're not operating, there could be serious consequences to that too, of people's perceived insecurity, food insecurity. And so having to have the conversation with those associates and saying it's both and, it's not either or, it's both. We have to protect ourselves and our people coming to work every day, and we have to get food into our communities. That was, I think, a pivotal moment, at least in my mind, where I realized we had really difficult decisions to make, not right or wrong, just difficult.
Well put. Several weeks ago, we had author and speaker Stan Phelps with us. Stan, if you're out there, hello. And Stan has done an excellent job of the Goldfish series. I had the opportunity to read The Red Goldfish, which is about purpose. In Stan's talking with us on Human Capital Matters, Khara, he brought up a guy we've heard a lot and studied about, Abraham Maslow. Maslow talks about the importance of shelter. I thought it was kind of ironic. We're home and shelter, and we're talking about Maslow and how do we motivate employees in a time like this where fears of food and shelter and health, we learned from Maslow that self-actualization means all that stuff's got to be covered well. How did you guys keep your people motivated, Khara?
So one of the things that we started talking about early on in my time at Americold is this concept of cold hands, warm heart. And so obviously the work that we do is cold. We have cold storage facilities, and our people are amazing, working in freezers that most of us could only stand for a few minutes, and they're in there for hours at a time taking care of our food. And so, in talking with my leadership team, one of the things that we said is, our hands might be cold, but we have a warm heart for our people, and we have a warm heart for our communities, and we have a warm heart for our customers. So before the pandemic, we were already talking to people about how much we care. And in the pandemic, it just gave us the opportunity to tell people even more that we are doing these things because our heart is warm and because we care. We're telling the associates at Halifax, it's important for you to come in because we care. And so honestly, I genuinely believe that people want to authentically connect with people. And a human being is much more important than a human doing. And so being able to connect with people and show the human being side and to genuinely, authentically lead as a person and not as a person checking something off of a list was really, really important through this time.
That is profound. Human being versus human doing. Really, really like that. I was a small part of an initiative in Wilmington called Love Does. And which reminded me of that too. If you care about people, we need to show it, right? We need to demonstrate that with our leadership style. Wonderful. So now we are somewhere through the spectrum and continuum of COVID. We've got more challenges, even non-COVID challenges as well facing us. How do you and the executive team now define your reality, and has reality been redefined for you guys moving forward, Khara?
We are so blessed. I'll start with that. I know so many companies don't have the privilege right now of talking about having a strong business, and we do. And I don't take that lightly, that despite what's going on around us, both with COVID and with the unrest in our country, we have a strong business because people need food. And honestly, this opportunity has helped us to even more talk to our people about being proud of the work that they do. So we've initiated this campaign, Americold Proud, and we have badges for our freezer jackets, we have wristbands, we have all kinds of opportunities to highlight why we're Americold Proud, and having our people tell their stories about why they're proud to contribute to something much bigger than them, which is, again, serving our communities. And so our reality today is still, on the one hand, my heart says, my heart is aching because we still have people who are suffering in many different ways in our communities, and therefore also within our facilities. But I'm also so hopeful because, again, our company is strong and we have an opportunity to make a really big difference within our communities. And so I'm excited to see what we do next and how we use these challenges and turn them into opportunities for our company and our people.
Thank you, Khara. You've made several excellent points today. Many, I know, our audience are pondering on takeaways. What may we learn and apply today in our businesses? How may we as leaders be more transparent? How may we show we have warm, caring hearts for all those that we work around? Really, really good material. We can take a look at the chat line. We can look at our dedicated email. We could see if some folks have some questions coming in, because I think time does allow, although we started a bit late, we could open it up to the audience. One of the questions, and I maybe asked earlier, is did you see that one come in?
Yep. I just saw that question.
Take a shot.
Asking what I would do differently. So, hindsight 2020, you always learn something after you're through different challenges. And I'll first start with what I wouldn't have changed is the amount of connectivity we had as a early on in the group decision making. I'm really proud of how we involved a lot of people in important decisions early on. But what I would say I might have done differently is making sure that there were more opportunities for those with different opinions and points of view to be able to express them and to have the space for more discourse early on. I think when you're in the midst of the heat of the moment and you've got big decisions and the consequences could be big, the tendency is that you try to quickly come to consensus. I would have actually allowed more time for us to debate and discuss the what ifs, in order to make sure that in the end, every decision was the best decision.
Did you guys feel sometimes that you were rushed? A decision needed to be made quickly. It was a big decision, and you felt that it would be great to have more time, maybe more input, but you had to make that big decision quickly. Did you find that happen some?
Yes, Bo, of course. I mean, so many of them, we had minutes to make decisions. We would get a text message that said, get on a call in 10 minutes. And everyone would drop everything, no matter where we were, get on a call. And we knew we had to make a decision quickly about how to safely proceed, given whatever the facts were. And that's when I think back, what would I have done differently is, of course, we had to make quick decisions. But you can also spend a little more time if there's one dissenting opinion in the room to say, you know what, let's hear this. Let's hear if this could change our course for this, this specific moment. But they were quick decisions. They were the best decisions we could make with the time given, but, always could be better.
Absolutely, yes. Let's see, can you see those coming in?
I saw two different chats come up. I see one question: what lasting changes do you anticipate from COVID-19 to your company culture? And I love that question because, again, it's an opportunity. You can see it as something that happened to us that we're a victim of, or you can see it as something that can propel us to something even greater. And I think it really did give us a chance to show that caring matters, and you can't put your heart back after it's out on your sleeve. And so it warms my heart to see that our leaders are engaging more on a personal level, and I hope that just continues to happen. And then I saw another question: do you feel like the reality is still shifting? How do you keep revisiting decisions, adjusting, staying agile? That is a great question, because that reality, the defining reality well, the reality we faced 2 months ago is different than the reality we faced a month ago, and it's certainly different than the reality we're facing today, which is much more complex and challenging than it was even a few weeks ago. And so I guess the first question is, the reality still shifting? Yes, absolutely it is. And an important thing to do is to continuously monitor and to not deny what we're seeing, that if we see it, address it. And how we stay agile is just always continuing to talk and stay connected and making sure that there's space for this dialogue versus just action.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So, Khara, as we segue and summarize and close out, clearly, again, we look at the obvious challenges, and we put information, we collect data to try to address obvious challenges, and then there's the challenges that come, and when they first hit us, they're not so obvious, which makes it we're probably more prone in the grieving process to stay in denial if it's not so obvious. What are you thinking now of what is very obvious about tensions, and we don't have the harmony that we need in the country, the workforces. We have a lot of opportunity to improve collaboration, relationships, and I think one of the things is respect. There's been a lot that has eroded. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you guys are in conversation as corporate executive leaders boy, it seemed like putting a business continuity plan, as tough as that has been, in some ways seems easier than the new challenges we're facing. What do you think of that?
Well, Bo, just like you and I were talking about earlier today, just as we were planning this discussion, I couldn't help but think I've got bigger things on my mind already. And you're right. I didn't anticipate that just a few weeks ago, I would no longer be as worried about COVID as I am if my people are okay. And you're right. There's the obvious. There are the things that are tangible shifts in reality. And then there are these things where, and I don't know if you see my eyes, I'm looking around. My office is a fishbowl. I have a glass in front of me and I can see a bunch of people that are sitting out here in front of me. And my heart just breaks looking at my people thinking, are they okay right now? And what is their reality? And how does that compare to my reality? And the fact that we just really need to spend a lot more time having those conversations, because that grieving cycle and that defining of reality is not one. It's individual. And every individual right now is in a different place based on what's going on with their family, what's going on in their personal life. And we just need to have a lot more grace, I think, for each other and have that connectivity, to your point.
Yeah, that is a word that we do use more and more is having grace, having respect for folks that we do not know what happened to them this morning or last week, and we can make a quick judgment, and we're usually wrong by making those judgments, aren't we?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
We would have to have you back another time, and we can get on to another subject that we've broached here already. But what a privilege to have you with us, Khara. Any other questions coming in? Anything? And Khara, as you leave us, you've encouraged me today, and I know you've encouraged others, particularly. When I grew up in human resources, it was a lot about positive employee relations, and it was a lot about that first line supervisor is your company, and who you hire and who you promote and how they behave, that's your company. So I got some tremendous training and guidance as a young lad, just starting my human resources career. Mildred Ramsey was around with her tapes, and she was famous for a lot of things, but one is people don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care.
Absolutely.
Whether you're facing a COVID challenge or you're facing other more significant challenges of the business, we are finding more and more how critical it is that executive leadership be transparent, be available, have an open mind, and be approachable through these things, right?
Absolutely. And I'm reflecting back, one of my mentors earlier in my career, Joseph High, he was the CHRO at Owens Corning when I was there. And I remember him coaching me on courage. And I'm so grateful, because I was coached on a lot of practical matters, to your point, practical human resource matters. But he was one of the few leaders that coached me on character, and the fact that he said, as a leader in human resources, you are responsible for the people that are within your organization, and you have to have the courage to lose your job over that which is right. And, that has stuck with me. And of course, this week I'm thinking to myself, what would Joseph do? And making sure I have the courage that no matter what it is that needs to be addressed, that I will lean into it, even if it's uncomfortable.
Excellent. Unwavering principles and courage. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us again. Thank you, Khara. We can imagine how busy you are, carving out time to be with us today. This event will go back out tomorrow and folks will be able to view. It'll be recorded, and we're grateful to be continue to move human capital matters along. So the business continuity plan, lots of great advice today on defining reality with Miss Khara Julien. Thank you, Khara.
Thank you, Bo. Have a blessed day.
Good luck to you and your team.
Thanks. Same to you.